Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament Gospels, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. And today we are looking at most of the people do not believe Jesus. Now, yesterday Jesus talked about and explained why he must die, and that was a little bit longer of a passage that we looked at there. But today's a little bit shorter. So, following that immediately, this is a follow up to exactly this. We're still in that same story here. Jesus told him why he must die, but here the people don't believe him. Right? They don't believe that he is Jesus, and so John 12. This is the only places this is recorded. John 12, verse 37 through 43. It starts out in verse 37. And it says, "But despite all the miraculous signs Jesus had done, most of the people still did not believe in him." This is exactly what Isaiah the prophet had predicted. It said, "Lord, who has believed our message? To whom has the Lord revealed his powerful arm?" But the people couldn't believe, for as Isaiah also said, the Lord had blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, so that their eyes cannot see, and their hearts cannot understand, and they cannot turn to him and have me heal them. And so we see that. And so in verse 41, it catches up. It says Isaiah was referring to Jesus when he said this because he saw the future and spoke of the Messiah's glory. Many people did believe in him, however, including some of the including some of the Jewish leaders, right? That did, but they wouldn't admit it for fear that the Pharisees would expel them from the synagogue. That's sad that we see that condition today. There's people who they believe, right? They believe God. They believe what they see, but they won't take that step forward because they're afraid of what others may think, and that's really unfortunate. It says in verse 43, "For they loved human praise more than the praise of God," and that's just a sad, hard place to be in. And so, again, this is a shorter section that we're going to look at here, that we're looking at with John 12. And we know that Jesus, so I mean, we've been going through this for close to 200 days now, and we know that Jesus had performed many miracles, but most of the people still didn't believe him, especially the religious leaders, but especially those type of people. They just they just didn't, and they refused to. I mean, the proof was right there in front of them, and they absolutely refused to believe it. And so, likewise, many today won't believe despite all that God does. And a lot of times people will tend to focus on the negative more than the positive, and they just ignore the things that God does do for them. And so, what we have to be discouraged, if you're a Christian and you're witnessing to people, right? Don't get discouraged if you witness for Christ and it doesn't turn like a ton of people out, right? I mean, you have to admit, like, or let's think about it. Jesus performed miracles, raised people from the dead, and he couldn't get people to believe in him. How much harder do you think it's going to be for us? Our job is to just continue to be a faithful witness, and work with those who are open, and work with those who are believe, and so are open to belief and faith. And so we are responsible to reach out to others, but they are responsible for their own decisions. We're not responsible for anyone else's decision. We aren't just responsible. It's our job to present Christ to them, but if they reject him, that is on them. That's not on you. And I know it's hard not to take it personal, because I'm that way. I'm a very like I'm a very I take things personal. It's like, oh, if I ask someone to do something, or someone doesn't like something, or you know I mean, shoot, even doing these videos, right? It's like someone like leaves a rude comment. Like, I take that personal, because it's like, hey, I put a lot of work into this. But the simple fact is that everyone's not going to appreciate the things that we do. Everyone's not going to appreciate Christ. Everyone's not going to do that. And so we just need to make sure that we do our job, and it's up to them in that at the end. And people in Jesus' times, right? Like those in the time of Isaiah, they just would not believe despite the evidence. We see it, and they just wouldn't do it. And so, if they wouldn't believe when they got Jesus raising people from the dead in front of them, we honestly have a much harder job in store for us. And so, as a result, God hardened their hearts. Now, this does not mean that God intentionally prevented them from being able to believe in him, and that's a kind of a confusing area sometimes, because people will be like, oh, well, he intentionally did this. No, he or he prevented them. It's like, we talk about free will. It's like, well, they didn't have free will because they hardened her. No, he was simply confirming their own choice. It's not that he just went to him and said, you know what, I'm just going to harden your heart so you don't believe in me. No, he wants everyone to believe him. But what he was doing is they had made their mind up. They had made their decision, and so they hardened. So after a lifetime of resisting God, they had become so set in their ways that they wouldn't even try to understand Jesus' messages. They weren't going to try it. So there were some of these people that they weren't even going to try to at all. They absolutely refuse. And so for such people, it's almost impossible to come to God because they've turned everything off. Their hearts have been permanently hardened to the fact of who God or who Jesus is. And I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's become really, really hard. And then God hardens their hearts. He just confirms their decision. This is the decision that you made. This is the choice that you've made. This is where you're going to go. And they've gotten so far from God that it's almost impossible for them to get back. And that's what he's read. He doesn't do this to everyone. It's just those who've made their mind up. They've made their choice, and so their hearts are hardened. We see other instances of this, right? Of constant stubbornness leading to the hardening of hearts. We see it in Exodus, right? 9:12 with Pharaoh. In Romans 1, we see it with people who give over. It's like God gives them over to their wickedness, right? And it gets horrible from there. If you want to read Romans 1, you can do that with verses 24 through 28, especially. And then we see it in 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 8 through 12. And so we see here Jesus is in front of this crowd. It's kind of funny, maybe it's not fun. I shouldn't say it's funny, but it's kind of interesting that we see, just a few moments ago, he was coming in right in on a colt and just praise, praise, praise. But then he started talking about how, oh, I gotta die. I'm not gonna live forever. I'm gonna come back. They missed that part. And it's like, wait a minute, this guy isn't the conquering hero we thought. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, he may be able to do all these miracles, but this isn't the guy we're looking for, because they misunderstood who Jesus was. And we misunderstand who Jesus is a lot of times. And we try to force Jesus into our own little holes of how we think he should be formed. And it's unfortunate. But we need to remember these things, right? The main message of this is, look, Jesus ministered to people and they didn't believe to him. If Jesus himself ministered to people and they didn't believe to him, we have a more difficult job. I mean, we do. And so, we do have a whole list of evidence and things that we can prove Christ with and prove God with. And so that does help. We have the Bible to help with that. But more than anything we have to show Christ is the way we behave and the way we act, right? You can be the smartest have the most Bible knowledge, be the smartest when it comes to biblical knowledge, but if you're an absolute jerk, you're not going to win anyone to Christ, right? You could quote scripture, the devil can quote scripture. He's probably better at it than any of us, and so the way you win people to Christ is through the way you behave, the way you act, the way you treat people, by showing love and kindness and mercy and grace. Those are the ways that you're going to win people over. And so that's what we need to focus on. And we just got to understand there's going to be people that don't believe. And we can't take it personally. I know it hurts. It's hard. You hate to see people walk away from Christ, especially with what he's offering. But that's the reality of it. And so we have to sometimes just move on from that. Not give up on them, but you go in a different direction sometimes. And so the main thing I want to see in this is we have a job to do. It's a hard job. But we're supposed to be. We're commanded to do it. We're asked to go forward and do it, and we just need to do it. But have an understanding of what it's going to be like, and how it's going to play out as we do this. If Jesus couldn't convince everyone, we're not going to be able to convince everyone. As always, I appreciate everyone for watching. I appreciate y'all supporting this and sharing it. If you find this helpful, please share it with someone you think that it would be helpful for. As always, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. You get alerts. That way you'll know whenever we publish new videos. And as always, I appreciate everyone for watching.